Thank you for having me. Jeez Louise, thank you for having me. You could be anywhere right now. Like you could be playing basketball with someone who has really beautiful wrists right now, you know? And you're here for poetry, so thank you for that. That's a gift not lost on me. I'm gonna open with an oldie because I like to open with an invocation to the muse. My first muse, my last muse, my every muse, because when my mother could not raise me and my father would not raise me, there was my abuelo, my grandfather, who many people saw as a simple picker, a simple yard man, but he was my mother and my father and my grandfather and my teacher and my priest and my everything sacred. So, and he was a gardener too. And this poem's called El Jardín de mi Abuelo. This poem's called My Grandfather's Garden. There's a little Spanish in this, don't worry. Just feel it, you know? If you feel it, you'll feel it. Bendito, bendito, bendito sea Dios. Los ángeles cantan y alaban a Dios. Memories of my grandfather's garden come back to me differently than other child of the hood memories. Memories of my grandfather's garden come back to me in well-watered voices and deep chest hymns that begin as a gurgle, deep in the belly and rise to the throat slowly. I remember little of the day my friends jumped me in. I remember fist flailing and afterwards those deep fleshy embraces only brown people know how to give. But grandfather's garden comes back to me with aromas, with corridos sung to the sun, and novenas sung to the moon, thinking both sides of life, the light and the dark for their bountiful harvest. Ay, Dios mío, all those nights we knelt together in brown earth, it was always about harmony, about balance, heed and tone deeply, thanking the life-giving soul for its gift, and I follow suit, carefully pulling up cilantro. Manzanilla, Hierba del Manso, always making sure a metal spade never touches fragile roots. Sweet, ancient abuelito. How could I be anything but a poet after those moments we shared? Don't you see, in my grandfather's garden, chiles grew. In my grandfather's garden, children grew. In my grandfather's garden, poems rose from the earth like the twisted arms of La Llorona, desperately reaching out for her missing children. In my grandfather's garden, all of these things would rise slowly because beautiful things take time to bloom. In my grandfather's garden, all of these things would rise slowly like well-watered voices, like deep chest hymns that begin as a gurgle, deep in the belly, and rise to the throat, slowly singing, always singing. Bendito, bendito, bendito sea Dios. Los ángeles cantan y alaban a Dios. Los ángeles cantan y alaban a Dios. Now we're ready to begin. Yeah. So, thank you so much. We love the new poems because they're new, y'all. Oh, man. I think I might open every reading I do on this tour with this page 13 in my book. Maybe my favorite page. It's not a poem, it's not a micro essay, it's not in translation, it's just a page. Maybe it's an instruction manual of sorts. This is called A Conversation with a White Poet at a Prestigious Literary Festival. Them. So Joaquín, let me get this straight. You take a book by a white male author and you read it until a page jumps out at you for whatever reason. You then erase every page before it and every page after it. Then you select somewhere between 3 and 14 random words on that single page and erase all the other words, leaving those isolated words floating in a sea of white space. You then occupy that white space with what you're calling brown verse. Is my understanding correct? Yes, it is. But don't you feel bad about taking words, even if it's just 3 isolated words on a page from a white male author? No. Why not? Because you see, I'm not taking any words. I'm discovering them. I'm colonizing them. So when I came up with the concept, the ideal for this book, this act of taking back, it was an idea, and I was like, how is this going to work? How am I going to make this even possible? Like, how am I going to do this? I knew I wanted to do it. I knew I was desperate to do it. And then I had a flight, and when I sat down in my seat on my Southwest Airlines flight, I noticed a bulge in the pocket in front of me. Someone had left something. I always panic when that happens. Oh my gosh, what if it's their iPad? I gotta get it back to them. So I reached in, and it was just like a bag, like a grocery store bag. It had something in it. I opened it up, and it was a novel. And I looked on the back, and the price said $7.95. I was like, we're already in the air. This is the universe gifting me a novel. And I turned it to the back to see if I should read it. And there was a sort of a nondescript about the author picture of this sort of like middle-aged white man in his 50s. And then I read the blurb, and it didn't sound like anything I would ever want to read in my entire life. But I thought the universe is working here. They put this book here. Damn it, I'm going to read it. And I was like going from like Charlotte to LA. It's like, this was a flight, man. This was like a flight, So I had some time. And I just read. Just read. And I kept reading this very mediocre book. And then I got to page, I don't remember what page it was exactly, but I was in it. I mean, it was like page 96 or something. And this word in the prose jumped out at my eye. It was the word obsidian. I was like, man, what is that beautiful word doing in this really shitty novel, And then also on that same page was the word torso, but it was hyphenated so that it had TOR-SO, torso. And I started thinking about my city, Dallas, and how the freeway I-30 runs right through it and dissects it. And it was intentional, and it was evil when this shit was done. There's a book called The Accommodation. You should read it, by Jim Schutz, about how Dallas was established and how they took freeways and ran through black neighborhoods, destroyed black communities by putting this freeway through it. So my city is tore so into, and all of a sudden I remembered, for some reason, my beautiful Puerto Rican wife bought me a pack of whiteout markers. It's like, I don't know why she did that. I don't even use them. And I reached into my backpack, and I grabbed them, and I pulled them, and I started whiting out words on this page, and I circled obsidian, and I circled torso to make sure I wouldn't white those out, and I think the word glass was on there, and then there was the word fried, F-R-I-E-D, which is so unusual to have that word on a page with the word obsidian, and instantly in my mind I knew I'm going to erase the R. I want it to be fied, F-I-E-D. I need it to be fied because I want that word to become gentrified anyway. So this is called View from the Fifth Floor of the Adam Hatz Building, 1986. Mijo, you see that dark facade? Magnolia Hotel, odd, mythic creature, gentrified Pegasus, hips of flesh or semblance of flesh tore, so of brick and glass, obsidian, clad shoulders, dominating, diminishing, a reflection far bigger than mannequin, opposite, glass, stone, steel, what they call progress, we call theft. They will come, mijo, blue suits, yellow dragons. They will come and take all of this from us. That was the first poem. And then the book began. And I knew I had to take that page with me, that page that I was working. And I remember ripping it out of the book. As the flight landed, I ripped that page out of the book so that I could revise and have my original source to pull from in case I wanted to revise and add in more words or take out words. I needed to have that original source material. And as I walked out of my flight onto the little walkway and into the terminal, I had the remnants of this novel missing a page, and I just threw it in the trash can. I just threw it away. And this was part of the act too. This part of the destruction is literally like, I'm taking this one book, I'm taking it, and it's going. I'm giving it to the landfill or to recycling. It's going away because I'm done with it. And so there was this destructive, consciously destructive thing that I was doing to create. And I wanted to take something very mundane and ordinary and boring and make it into something extraordinary and beautiful. And this was the beginning of the process. Early on, I knew I wanted the book to open with a sestina because I love the form. You don't want to know how many books I had to read. Oh my God. I read hundreds of really shitty books to make this beautiful book happen. And when it came to the sestina, I read dozens and dozens because I needed to think about, I knew the 6 words I wanted to work with, so those weren't going to be colonized, those were going to be my words. But I needed to thematically have it fall in a thematic relation to those 6 words that were going to be my ending words. And I started thinking about like, how much space would this take up? Because I don't want it to be in a traditional form. I want it to be in this sort of deconstructed form of a sonnet. And I knew a sestina, and I knew immediately that I wanted it to be a block that looked like a wall that would then sort of disintegrate before your eyes. The wall would fall. And now I have to find a book where everything I'm going to erase around the center point of the novel because I need the center point to be colonized space, and I need to be able to pull from those words. And I looked and I looked and I looked, and nothing was working. Dozens and dozens and dozens of books. And then I found one by a white male author that had been translated into Spanish. And I thought to myself, I want to destroy this book. And I was erasing Spanish, and so you'll know kind of like the words that, that were, and not all of the Spanish words. Like sometimes I would colonize a word in Spanish and then add something to it, So, Sestina Frontera. De la misma manera, we more akin to dark than light, cursed for Spanish tongues for whom death gapes. With bruised hands and heels, we stay low, give watchman the slip. We, just another kind of silt. Eso es lo que la gente quiere que les explique. Climb from the river, wash away silt, move quickly, travel lightly, cuidado, silently side slip, wrap sharp American syllables around tongues, beware the coyote, the heel, you run, pant, your mouth gapes, es verdad, this new country, this language gap, nothing more than dreams and silt, trained dogs, fresh on heels, run from darkness, run to light, slow your breath, silence tongue, let water slip through lips. Y las damas, las mujeres, in dresses lower their slips. Arid canyon walls gape. Silence chattering teeth with tongues. Use hands to carve a bed in silt. Pray to the Virgin's horn moon for light. Don't wish for home. Don't click your heels. Creo y deseos. Solo hay uno. Yo. When morning comes, walk softly, toe, then heel. Through the bosque you quietly slip. Question your prayers, do not trust the light. La migra, hungry to close the gap. Smooth out your skirt, dust off the silt. Tilt heads to ground, stifle tongues. Si se deciden hablar, let the rolled R fall from your tongues. Pick up the pace. Push with your heels, you more than river, more than silt, more than mistake, more than slip. Familia waits, their arms agape. Run, claw, fight for the light. Aquí está todo suyo. Speak lightly, hold tongue, a gaping wound called faith. Here you are healed, baptized by river slip and earthly silt. Thank you. So It's very special to me to be here in El Paso to open this reading because I was writing this book over the last 2 years of my life. And I work for a youth engagement company. It's sort of how I pay my bills. I was a public high school English teacher, and then I wrote a book. And, and I got to tour, universities and colleges with this book of poetry I wrote a long time ago that the first poem, Abuelo's Garden, was from. And then I won a poetry slam, and then I did HBO, and people wanted me to come to their colleges, and it was a whole thing. But that star fades after a while. It's like, hey, like what? You're on HBO. There was a poetry show on HBO? It's like, when was it? 2006, So I met this youth engagement company, and they promote motivational speakers, and they wanted me on their team. And I'm like, I am not a motivational speaker. I talk about writing. Like I want to talk about essays and poems. And they're like, that's what we need. We need someone who can talk to young people about the power of essays and the power of poems, maybe even do workshops to teach them how to write them well. It's like, I'm your person. And so I've been doing a lot of work with 2 programs across the country that are called HEP Camp, HEP, H-E-P, and Camp, C-A-M-P. And and HEP Camp is, HEP is sort of high school, middle school and high school, and then Camp is university. And these programs help students who are migrant students, meaning their families, move all the time with the fields through multiple states sometimes. And my journey's brought me down to the Rio Grande Valley to work with students who were here. And I had a conversation with an administrator at a school in Edinburgh about some of the students that they serve, that they work with. And they told me about the students. And when I wrote the book in its original form, it was a collection of poetry. And I submitted the book to my publisher. I was named the inaugural Dallas Poet Laureate 2 years ago. And Dallas was so lovely to me that there are poet laureates all over the country who reached out to me like, oh, I can't believe Dallas gave you all that. Like, I don't get anything or whatever. And they gave me a $20,000 prize. Like, no one's ever handed me a $20,000 check in my life. And my wife was there at City Hall, and she was like, she took that check. She's smarter than I. And they gave me an office in downtown Dallas to write at the Central Library for 2 years. Like, picture like having to pay for an office in downtown Dallas, for 2 years. And I got to use that as much or as little as I wanted to, as long as it was during library hours. And then they gave me a book deal with Deep Vellum Books in Dallas, Texas. And Deep Vellum Books is not a poetry publication house. They are now, but it's new to them. They've been publishing poetry for a few years. Traditionally, what they're known for the last 12 years is they're a translation house. So they find a brilliant novelist in Yugoslavia, and they publish their work in their language and in English, or they'll find someone in Pakistan and publish it in their language and in English. They're a translation house for fiction and nonfiction and memoir. That's what they made their mark as. And they're a daring press. They do very daring things with their books. And when I found out that was the case, I submitted my book to their team, and their editor, Sebastian Baramo, PhD, he said to me, Joaquin, let's make it even more daring, because these are hybrid erasures. Let's embrace hybridity even more, and let's put things in a poetry book that don't belong there. Like, do you have any essays or micro essays you could insert? And I was like, yes, I do. But I have a couple of conditions. And the first condition is, if I insert a micro essay into the book, I want the micro essay to be on black paper with white text, and I want the poems to be on white paper with black text. That's the first condition. And they said, yes. And then I said, I want the micro essay to be in Spanish first, and then translated into English. And they said, yes. And then I said, my final condition is every micro essay and every essay that's in the book has to be untitled and have no mention of it in the table of contents. In other words, there are undocumented pieces in my book. They're undocumented, but they're just as important. So this has no name, has no title. You won't find it in the table of contents, but I wrote this for the children of Edinburgh. Not far from where I live, there are students, brown children, born here, living there. Children of nowhere. Their parents came over to work in the fields. These children are American citizens who live in Mexico. Their day starts with a walk to their first bus ride. Some of those students walk great distances, hours before the sun rises, to that first bus ride. After their second bus ride, they finally arrive at the border, where new policies and procedures slow them down to a standstill, in some instances tripling the time it used to take them to cross over líneas, lines. Waiting in long lines is a part of their everyday. After crossing the border, another city bus ride to an area near the school where they walk the last few blocks from there. Yes, some of them are sponsored by American, in most cases Mexican-American familias, and they live with them in Brownsville or Edinburgh Monday through Friday, and then they go home on the weekends to Mexico to be with their fathers and mothers, sisters and brothers, which brings with it its own kind of trauma to deal with. But there are students who make this journey every day. Every day. And if they have extracurricular activities that keep them after school, football, ROTC, student clubs and organizations, that means their walk, their first bus ride, their crossing, their second and third bus rides, their long walk home after that is delayed. Can you imagine what it is to start your day at 4 a.m. in the darkness of morning, to study and do homework as best you can, many times while riding on multiple crowded buses, to sacrifice in this way, to work in this way all day, and then make the long journey home, arriving sometimes at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., only to wake in a handful of hours to start all over again. These are the children of the RGV, the Rio Grande Valley, a place that is both here and there at the same time. Perhaps I was wrong. Maybe they aren't children of nowhere. Maybe they are children of everywhere. If you ever hear a Latinx, Latina, Latino use the term ganas, these children, this story is what I want you to think of. So these essays became a big part of the project too. Because Deep Vellum is a nonprofit publishing house, they take chances. And I decided, well, if they're going to let me take these chances, I'm going to see if I can take more. Because as I was traveling in the RGV and in El Paso and in southern New Mexico and southern Arizona and southern California, as I was working with students in all these regions, I had my handy iPhone with me. And I just started taking photos along the border, the southern border of the United States that borders with Mexico, as many as I could. And I put them in a folder that I called Occupy Whiteness. And I made sure they were always in black and white. I wanted these photos to be in black and white. And I told my publisher, I want to insert about 22 photos into the book. And they said, sure. And then I told them, I want to put a QR code in the back of the book that can lead to live performances. And they said, sure, we'll help you find the filmographer to film the videos. And then I said, I also want to put some resources on how to support people who are crossing over or have crossed over. They said, absolutely. Everything I asked, they just kept saying yes. When I tell you that Will Evans and the people on his team at Deep Vellum are, maybe they're doing God's work. I don't know. They're doing something sacred. They're doing something very important. And I'm very lucky to be a part of their team. I'm going to read you another poem. Yes, I want to read this one so badly. I love this poem. I was in California, and I was working with some migrant students in a camp program. These were 18, 19-year-old college students. And I met this kid named Isidro. And I was asking him about his life. Like, tell me about your life. And he talked with me about the states that his parents picked in. They picked in California, Oregon, and Washington. All of them. Like, they would follow crops, which meant they would spend 2 months here, spend 3 months there, and then spend 2 months up there, and then come back and spend 4 months here, and then picture going to high school like that, you know? Like, these kids have so much stacked against them. And I was asking him to tell me about his life, and he said to me, he said to me something. He said, like, Joaquin, it was hard. And I said, how was it hard? And he said, some of the fields were really rough. And I said, well, can you elaborate? And he said, like the shacks that we lived in had dirt floors. And they would run extension cords through, so you had like one outlet in your home that you could either hook up a heater or a light to, you know? And if too many people plugged too many things in, like it would short everything out, and then you'd have nothing. Like dirt floors. This was like 2022 when I'm having this conversation with this teenager. And then he said the really hard part for me was the communal bathrooms. So like you'd have like 10 shacks, and there'd be a communal bathroom in the middle, and then you'd have 10 shacks. And everyone shared these bathrooms. There were showers in there that had curtains, but he said the stalls, the toilet stalls, had no doors. And they faced an entrance that had no door. And he said there was a girl who was, her family was following the same path his was, and he had the biggest crush on her. And he was only going to the bathroom very late at night because he was terrified that this young girl that he thought was pretty was going to walk in on him and see him using the restroom. He was terrified. And one night, she did. And he said the look on her face, she saw him and he saw her, and then she said the look of like horror and shame that she felt for him, like it broke his heart. And he was like I don't even get privacy. Like I'm a citizen of the United States of America, and I don't even get to have privacy when I'm shitting. It's like evil. It's like, he's like, it's like fucking slavery, you know? And so he's having this conversation and he's crying. He's like a young man, and he's like muscular and strong, and he's like weeping as he's telling me this story. It's called Rooted in the Verge for Isidro. There, where grapes and brown boys grow, I open my eyes. Vineyards, how they grow up from ground and overhead. I recall how impossible this seemed, hearing God on still air whisper in your ear, you were born to be caged. Do you feel free when you drink your wine? No need to read it in books. Migrant boys can tell you all you need to know about slavery. Rows of shack homes, shared by multiple families, hard dirt, packed floors, communal bathroom, toilet stalls without doors because brown boys can't afford the privilege of privacy even while shitting. Clouds came full over and thunder. The morning storm did not linger. It drifted by languidly. There where suns rise but do not shine. There where brown boys give sweat and blood to the soil. They were growing, hooked onto vines, rooted in the verge. Can you tell where their hands end and earth begins? I'm thinking a lot about this tour that's coming up, and I'm wondering, like, if I have a 40-minute reading, I'm wondering at what point will the audience think themselves, what were the books by these white guys that he erased, you know? Like I want to know who he destroyed, you know? And that was a big thing for me. I have the original page, and I made notations, and I took all the works cited information that I would need, like publication date, and I even took down ISBN numbers so I could find them if I need them again, you know? And I cataloged all of it, and I documented all of that. And when I was tacking my manuscript up on the wall and working through it, as Showa Mitsui, my former MFA professor, taught me how to do, the first page would be the original source that was torn out of a book. It was really weird seeing these torn pages out of different shaped books on top of my revisions of my poem, but that was the beginning. And as I started getting toward what I knew was going to be the book, I started thinking to myself, oh my God, do I need to create an acknowledgments page for all these books I've destroyed? And then, so, the book opened with that conversation with a white poet at a prestigious literary. So I put this at the back of the book. This is near the end. This isn't the end of the reading, but I just want to share this. In case you've been wondering, what are those damn books? A conversation with a native poet at a prestigious MFA program. Me. I've been thinking about whether or not to cite the novels and works of nonfiction by white male authors I've been destroying to create these hybrid erasures. My gut says no. I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. What do you think I should do? Joaquin, you have deconstructed the original source in a way that has become something entirely new. This is more than erasure. It's obliteration, followed by creation. 12 isolated words pulled from a 300-page novel does not warrant a citation. I see your point. If the roles were reversed, do you think a white male author would acknowledge you? And there's something else to consider. Inside and outside of the literary world, when have you ever felt acknowledged by a white man in your life? I was silent for several seconds. Huh? Sounds like you have your answer. After I won my second world championship in another life, I was a poetry slam champion, y'all. After I won my second world championship, I started getting invited to more and more things, and some people reached out to me from the Missouri State Literary Festival. This was in 2010 or 11. It's a long time ago. And they were going to have the festival have a sort of focus on poetry that year. And they wanted to have two keynote poets. And they invited Billy Collins, who I think at that time was the U.S. Poet Laureate. And they invited Joaquin Zihuatanejo, the current World Poetry Slam champion, to come and be the two features. I think Billy Collins hates me, y'all. They asked us to go to this fundraiser thing for people who gave a lot of money, and then they asked Billy to read a poem. I was like, oh, thank God they didn't ask me. And Billy got up and read one of his little, he writes those little beautiful, little funny, they make you smile. Like, my wife loves Billy Collins' poetry because, sometimes all a poem has to do is make you smile. Sometimes that's enough. And his poems make people smile. They're little things that make you smile. And he read this little thing and it made everyone in the room smile. And I was like, phew. And then the host gets up and says, Joaquin, your poem that's in half English, half sign language, would you please do that for the audience now? It's like, shit. You're not, I have to go up after Billy Collins and do this big theatrical thing after he read this little 30-second, I don't want to do that. I'm going to look like an asshole, And they were like, please, Joaquin, please. And then there was a priest in the room, and he got up and he came over and he prayed over me for 10 seconds to invoke me to do it. So I got up and I did the poem, and it's very big and it's got sign language and it's theatrical and it's this whole beautiful 2.5-minute piece of theater and poetry and truth and this student I taught, and it's glorious, it's beautiful. I just didn't want to do it then, And I did it. And I got a standing ovation from everyone in the room except one person. Billy Collins was like, I talked to him later on at the festival, and we talked a little, but I still think he hates me. Oh, I think he hates me. Oh, anyway. So the reason I'm telling that story is because I think it was a 3-day festival, and I told them I couldn't be there for day 3. I had to leave the evening of day 2 because I had to go to a university that I had a workshop at I don't know why I had a workshop at 9 in the morning. This university, and it was like a 4-hour drive away. So I was like, shit, how am I going to do this, Because I had a hotel for the duration, and then I had a plan. I was like, I got it. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to sleep till 3 a.m. I'm going to wake up, and I'm going to drive 4 hours. I'll get there in the morning, 7. I'll go to IHOP. I'll grab some pancakes, and I'll go to the university and teach my workshop. And I get out, and I head on the freeway, and I have, this was in October. It was cold as hell outside. It wasn't snowing, but it was really cold. There was wind, but I had just woken up at 2:45 a.m. So I had on basketball shorts, a t-shirt that had a Dallas Mavericks logo on it, and chanclas, sandals. That wasn't everything that I was wearing, in its entirety. And I run out to the car and I throw my suitcase in, and I get in the car and I get on the freeway, and I drive more than most people in the country because I tour all the time, and I'm a brown man, and I'm usually driving a very new car, a new rental car. So if the speed limit is 65, I'm going to do 65. So I'm driving down the freeway, and I think it's a 70, and it's 3:15 in the morning, 3:30 or whatever, and I'm doing like 68. Whoop, whoop, whoop. There are the lights, right behind me. I'm one of the 2 featured poets at the Missouri Literary Festival, and I'm in Missouri, and it's 3:15, and I'm being pulled over by a cop. And I pull over, and there is no one around. It is like blackness and me and a cop, and 2 cops get out, and they're both white, and they get out, and they come, and they tap on my window, and I have my license, and I have my insurance card on my phone, and the first thing he said to me was, "Can you please get out of the vehicle?" I am in shorts and sandals and a t-shirt. And I get out, and they said, "Can you go back behind the back of the car?" So I go and I stand behind the back of the car, and the other guy comes from behind me, and he says, "Can you please kneel down?" And so I kneel down on the ground, and a guy comes behind me, and he lifts up my shirt, and then he puts my shirt back down. I am one of the 2 featured poets at the Missouri Literary Festival. And then one of the guys goes back to his car, and he gets tools, and he opens up every door of my rental car. And they get power tools, and they take the door panels off. This took like 30 minutes, and I'm kneeling in the cold. They put the doors back on. I get up. They ask me to get up. They ask for my license and insurance, which I give them. They go back to their car. They say I can get in the car. And I'm freezing. I turn the heat on full blast, and they come back. And they say, "All good, have a good night." And I'm like, "Oh," I said, "I'm sorry. Like, my name's Joaquin Zihuatanejo. I'm a writer. And I was one of the 2 featured writers at the Missouri Literary Festival. I just left there just now. Like, Billy Collins is famous. You might know him. Like, I got paid as much as he did to be there. Like, I'm like, why did you do that to me? Like, why did you make me kneel for half an hour in the cold and lift my shirt up?" And they said, "This thoroughfare, a freeway, is known for trafficking drugs from Mexico all the way into the northern part of the United States. And your car was very new, and just sometimes we do this." And they walked away and handed me and I drove off. I started writing an essay. It's not in this book. It'll be in another book. But I started writing an essay about all the times in my life I've been pulled over by white police officers. I've been given 3 tickets in my life. I deserved them. 2, I was speeding. 1, I ran a stop sign. Like, I slowed down. And in this essay, so that inspired me to start calculating, right? So start documenting. I have a very detailed list. I've been pulled over 36 times in my life by white police officers. 36. I've been pulled over for thought your windshield was cracked. I've been pulled over for thought the light above your license plate wasn't working. I've been pulled over for passing in the passing lane too slowly, lingering. I've been pulled over for passing in the passing lane under the speed limit, but too quickly to be safe. These things resonate with me. I'm a brown man living in Texas, a border state. That's not an easy existence. And it's even more challenging for my 2 beautiful brown daughters. Because I'm a brown man in a border state. They are brown women living in a border state. And I think about their lives and their struggles. And this book, it's a slap in the face to those 2 policemen who had the nerve to pull me over. This book is an answer. It's a callback for every legislator who says it is okay for Texas state troopers to pull their guns if necessary on Border Patrol agents to prevent them by force from helping a woman and her 2 children who are drowning in a river. They must watch them drown. They must watch them die. For every legislator who says that, these poems say, help them, dive in, and save them. I keep telling everyone these aren't the most beautiful poems I've ever written, but they are the most important. I'm going to read you a couple more poems. Thank you for listening to me tonight. Oh, goodness sakes. Let's do this one. Let's do this one. So this is called 102. And Jake Skeets, who was in my cohort of my MFA, was a selector for Poem a Day for Poets.org. And Jake selected this poem to be on the Poets.org Poem a Day website. And I was like, oh my gosh, the Academy of American Poets. They're going to ask for a bio. And they did. And then I became Dallas Poet Laureate, and they're like, we're going to give you a whole page, man. And I was like, awesome. So this is called 102, and I'll read this one in one more piece. 117. "102. And the boy played with the mother's fluvial hair, black, her mosaic frame, burnt umber, the daughter just out of arm's reach. Gone already. They found the boy in time to save him. Many years from now, someone will tell him the awful truth of all that was lost, the bruises on their backs, shoulders, waists, how two women, mother, sister, carried him, gave him their water. On that day, he will learn all there is to know of brown and gold, of flesh and sand." The original title for that poem was Of Flesh and Sand, but I call it 102 because that was the temperature when they found the boy in the evening. In the evening, when they found the boy beside his lifeless mother and his lifeless, the temperature was 102 in the evening. You went through the tragedy of this book with me, and I thank you for that. So I'm going to do something Shakespearean and finish with a little comic relief. So we need to. I wrote an essay that's untitled and undocumented. It's in this book. It's in Spanish first, but I'm going to read the English version. It's a shorter essay. I love this very, very much. I love this piece so much. I was named a Tin House Latinx scholar a few years ago. Tin House is this very prestigious writing conference and workshop series. And people pay to go to it. You have to pay a lot of money. Like people pay like $3,800 just to go and be one of the students there. And they made me a Latinx scholar, which means they were going to pay my fee for me, and they were going to fly me, and they were going to feed me, and they were going to give me a rental car, all for free. And I was like, yes, thank you very much. And if you've never been to Tin House, I think if you can get a grant, go. Like, don't pay for it, Jesus Christ. But like, have someone else pay for it. Because it was wonderful. Because you wake up early to go to breakfast at 7 a.m. with poets who are in your cohort. And then you go to morning workshops with poets in your cohort. Then you have lunch with poets. And then you go to afternoon craft talks with poets. And then you have dinner with poets. And then you go to evening readings with poets. And then you go to late night events with poets. And after about 4 days, it's like an 8-day thing. After about 4 days of being with poets from 7 a.m. to like 2 in the morning, after about 4 days of that, you know what you want to do? You want to get the fuck away from poets. That's what you want to do. Why did the universe have to make us so goddamn insecure, you know? So I woke up on day 5 and I was like, enough, enough. I'm skipping today. I'm skipping. Because I've been to this is in Portland. I've been to Portland like 25 times in my life, but my Portland excursion is this. I land late at night in Portland, like at 10 p.m., and then I go to my hotel, and then I go do a reading at a university, or I go to a workshop at a university, and then I go to a diners, dives, and drive-in chili spot, and then I go catch my flight. Like, I can tell you like 20 places to get good chili in Portland. That's all I know of Portland. And I'm here, and I'm like, people always talk about this place, how it's magical. I want to go find the magic. Joaquin, let's skip. I got out of bed and I went over to go brush my teeth and start my day. I splashed water on my face and I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and I was like, Joaquin, what are you doing? They paid a lot of money for you to be here. Go to breakfast. Go to workshop. And I went to breakfast with poets and I went to the morning workshop. And when we got to the morning workshop, our workshop facilitator, Dorian Lux, the brilliant Dorian Lux, said, we're going outside to workshop today. And I was like, yes, I made the right decision. We went and sat out under a live oak tree. We put chairs in a circle. We had our pen, our paper, our notebooks. It was like, this is the life, you know? And then at that moment, a bird shit on me. And I stood up and I said, excuse me. And I gathered my things and I went to my dorm room and I showered twice. And then I changed and I walked right to my rental car and I skipped the entire day. And then this happened. Because, man, I was in it, y'all. I was in Portland. I went to like 4 coffee shops before 10 a.m. I don't drink coffee. Like 5 independent bookstores, multiple canvas book bags I had purchased. I'm in it. I'm doing it. And about 4 p.m., after being in Portland, I was all over the place. I looked around. There's a window in this restaurant that looked out onto the city, and I was like, you know, I haven't seen one person of color. This is Untitled and Undocumented. Thank you all so much for listening to me today. Today, a crow shit on me. This is not metaphor. This is fact. This poem would be more romantic and less true if I wrote it raven. But it was in fact a crow. There are more Black Lives Matter, Love Wins, Diversity is Celebrated posters hanging in storefront windows in Portland than any other major city in the United States. I have been here 4 days. I have yet to see a person of color in Portland. One might argue that the 25th largest city in this country is not a major city, but with the combined statistical area, it comes in at 18. I find a bar graph online depicting the racial makeup of Portland: 74% white, 8% Asian, 6% black, less than 1% American Indian. There is no bar graph labeled Latinx, Latinx, Latina, Hispanic, Chicano, Mexican American, Mestizo. There is one labeled other. We might be in there. A group of crows is commonly called a murder, but can also be known as a muster or a storytelling. Some of the most woke white storytellers live in combined statistical areas that are 74% white. Those writers too have signs in their front yards that read, all people are equal, people and planet are valued over profit, women are in charge of their bodies, as do their neighbors. There are signs everywhere in Portland. There is no way for sign makers to keep up. I do not know why a bird shitting on you is a sign of good fortune. I fall back on the advice of my high school students. Mister, Google that shit. So I do. Theories vary. The first search yields me 3 possible answers. 1, it's messy and disgusting. So is childbirth. So there must be something good about it. 2, after being shit upon, yes, the website used the word upon. It did not use the word shit. By a bird, one's day surely cannot get worse and thus can only get better. 3, it has everything to do with the odds. Something along the odds of winning the lottery or of being killed by a white police officer under the North Skidmore overpass near Interstate 5. If you see 5 crows, sickness will follow. If you see 6, death will follow. This is not fact. Perhaps it is metaphor. Certainly it is superstition. But aren't all superstitions rooted in truth? And just like that, I see a person of color in Portland. Somewhere near the corner of Powell and 12th, a striking, robust, black man pictured on a billboard that reads, "This is a toxic-free zone." Sitting in Pine State Biscuits, I can hear the two white cooks calling back to Alberto, who is washing dishes. From the angle of my booth, I cannot see Alberto, but I can hear him. He is there. He is not other. He is here. He is. I count 29 white people eating biscuits and fried chicken. As I stand to leave, I notice a button on a white man's backpack that reads, "Immigrants and refugees are welcome." Thank y'all so much for listening to me tonight. Y'all were lovely.